And here is your big board. As we take a look at 1 through 10, no surprise, Travis Hunter, generational prospect number 1. Abdul Carter, getting a lot of buzz to go first overall, is second. But the guy I want to start with, kind of naturally, Ashton Jeanty. And I guess.
And to be clear, these are your rankings of talent. This is not a mock draft. This is not
just
how
talent.
This is just.
Yep. These are the best players in the draft.
Pure talent. And
that's why Ashton Jeanty's a 3.
Speaking of that talent, exactly where does Jeanty stack up to like Saquon, Bijan, Adrian Peterson, these generational prospects?
Right, yeah. Who forget Brian Robinson? It's funny to ask that, Jay, because one, he's really just as good as those guys on a talent perspective, but he's so different, right? He's not as explosive as AP was coming out, or he didn't have the outside breakaway speed that Barkley had that was rare air. But what Jeanty has, better than any of those guys, is he has the best balance I've ever seen at the position for a college player. Obviously, things get a little different at the NFL level, but you watch 300-plus pound defensive tackles at Oregon bounce off of this guy. And Lawrence and I sat down with him at Super Bowl, and we asked him, and this is somebody he's just been lifting weights his entire life. He knew that his body's strength would be so important to him. And he's a gifted runner in terms of vision and feel. I think he doesn't get enough credit for that. He's somebody that understands how to kind of be patient, pick the hole, explode through it, run through arm tackles. He's a good pass protector. Like, there's really not much this guy can't do. And I think if he ran here, and he's not going to, maybe he'll run at the pro day, I think he would have ran a lot better than people expected. They looked at him as a 4-5 guy. He's probably more of a 4-4 guy.
Yeah, the best thing about him, too, Connor, is people questioned that speed coming into the season, but during the season, you saw that no one was catching him from behind. He would outrun some angles, and he had enough speed to get there. And he told us he could probably run a 4.4, maybe a 4.3. So I definitely think that 4.4 range is it for him.
Is there a single cleanest comp to Jeanty? Who does he remind you most of?
I haven't landed there yet with him. I have one for when we talk about Amarian Hampton in this running back class, because once again, it's just so unique a guy that size with that pound-for-pound strength. It just doesn't exist very often. I'll land on one after the testing and you get real measurements, not school-listed measurements. But Jeanty, to me, he becomes the identity of your offense, Matthew, the day he steps in the building.
And he's going to be a first-round pick. I think he's going to be a top 12 fantasy pick and top 12 NFL draft pick. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to, because whoever invests that kind of draft capital in him, it's Bijan Robinson. It's somebody that's going to get just a massive
without Arthur Smith ruining
it. Exactly. But you just think about Ezekiel Elliott his rookie year. You think about Saquon his rookie year. Like, if you spend that kind of draft capital on a rookie running back, he's getting the rock a lot.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State. Where does Tyler Warren stack up on the, again, generational kind of list of tight end? Like, how does he compare to Brock Bowers?
Well, that's the problem. He comes the year after Brock Bowers, and I don't know if I'll ever have a tight end better than Brock Bowers, especially translating to fantasy. Sure. He was just as gifted as a pass-catching tight end as you get. That's why I compared him to George Kittle that year. But Warren's still really good. It's not very common you get a player in one college season that catches touchdowns, runs for multiple touchdowns, and then throws a touchdown. High school quarterback. This is somebody that's 260-plus pounds. What matters with Warren in fantasy is he will never come off the field because he's such a good inline blocking threat. That allows offenses to play multiple. He's a big-bodied red zone threat, and he had the receiving production to match. So Warren, for me, is somebody that he'll be a top 5 tight end in fantasy, maybe not next year, but in the near future because he's going to play so much.
Interesting thing, too, about him, Connor, you mentioned the rushing. There's a lot of talk going on right now about the tush push, right? We see how the Ravens use it, right? They put Mark Andrews in there, and they push him forward. That could be Tyler Warren, and if you could get 4 or 5 touchdowns on a season, that will boost his fantasy value tremendously.
It's a great call, Lawrence. I think he's built for it. He played Wildcat quarterback for Penn State.
Yeah.
He could be a tush push absolute machine in fantasy.
The only challenge with Warren is that, like, it didn't affect George Kittle this year, but traditionally, like, Kittle has not been as great a fantasy asset as perhaps he could be because he's blocking, because they're using him to block so much that he's not running routes on every play. Not even every drop back. So, unfortunately, sometimes being a good blocker, it gets you on the field, but doesn't always come together. That was the problem with Njoku early in his career too. Njoku's a great blocker,
Yeah.
Great blocker.
It happens to Goddard sometimes.
Yeah.
Goddard could have more receiving production, but he's a good blocker.
I wonder with what's happened to Cooper Kupp's body, whether teams kind of deprioritize like players of that skill level who can block at that capacity. Because Cooper Kupp was like the best blocking tight end in the wide receiver in the league for a time, and
they do it to Puka now though.
Yeah, I know. Like, yeah,
that's the problem.
That's the issue. Okay, Tetairoa McMillan is number 10 on your board, Connor. Lawrence, what do you think that the upside is for Tet in year one?
I think it's great. He's a receiver that could do anything at that size. He moves like a guy who's smaller than what he actually is, 6'4", going about 210. We'll see what he officially measures here at the Combine. But when we talked to him, Connor, during Super Bowl week, I asked him what a successful season would look like for him, and he said just getting out of it healthy. I just want to play football. And that showed me he care about the game. Asked him about his matchup with Travis Hunter. He respects his game. He said that's the biggest face in football right now. And so he respects his opponents, but he can also go out there and compete with them. Because he had the upper hand against Travis Hunter the 2023 season, and not a lot of receivers could do that. A lot of people compare him to Drake London. I would say he's a bit more explosive, although he's not a 4.3 guy, but enough speed to get you what you need.
Yeah, Cortland Sutton, for me, is the one I really like. And I know Sutton's been hurt, but he felt like he really bounced back this year with Bo Nix under center. I just think that kind of size and red zone ability, and Lawrence, he brought up, he's like, people thought I couldn't run after the catch, and I showed them right away that I can make
First game of the year.
First game of the year, I'm going to show them I'm going to make plays after the catch. Matthew, landing spot will be so key for McMillan, though. You want a place where the targets are just on a platter.
Yeah, and by the way, that they take advantage of his skill set as well, and that there's a good quarterback and a good play caller in place. But I think what we it's super weird because I can talk out of both sides of my mouth, right? There's the Brock Bowers argument. Talent is talent. It doesn't matter. There's some Malik Neighbors didn't matter. That was the anti-Malik Neighbors argument, was well, he's not going to have a quarterback, and he dropped too far in drafts, and he was on the love list. On the other hand, the same argument was made for Rome Odunze, and
he had to wait.
He had to wait. He didn't do anything as well. So landing spot's going to be, as with any wide receiver, landing spot is so important. When we were talking a year ago, we were talking about Odunze and Harrison. Maybe a little McConkey, but we certainly weren't talking about Brian Thomas Jr. a year ago.
No.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.